Okay, guys, come on down. Come on down and around here. Yeah, you can be in the street, but just, like we need to be safe, right? So everybody move down and congregate here so you can all come. You can come around here. Yeah, safe street. And you can come in a little bit too. You don't need to be back so far. Yeah, rolling. Truth. Truth. The truth is that I would rather not be here. I would rather not have to do this. I've spent a year thinking about this, obviously. This Wednesday is the first anniversary of Ruth's death. Truth is what she always looked for, what she sought in everything that she did. And thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting Ruth. And I'm glad that it took a while for me to kind of figure out what the right thing was. But when the light went up, I realized that it was time. And so we're here. My name is Jim Bradley. Ruth Mullen was my wife and my partner for 32 years. She was born in Colorado on June 22nd, 1953, in a little town that no one had ever heard of at the time called Littleton. Now I think everyone knows what Littleton represents, and it was the beginning of something that seems to continue on every week. Just another of the many synchronous things. I have some cheat sheets here, and I wanted you to know that I grabbed some stuff from one of her drawers, and I started writing on it, and then I realized that it's a Be a Voter card that she always had. She had packs of these postcards that she would send out to people saying, wherever, in Alabama or Georgia or whatever. She was constantly sending these, and she had, I think we have 3 packs of them. Constantly, there was not a day that went by after 2016 when some of these weren't flying out the door. So she went to high school in Littleton, and then she went to a school in Colorado called Colorado College. And some of you have noticed, I think, some of you from the neighborhood have noticed that there's been a hat over there, and there's been some other totems of her life. And there are a few people here that knew Ruth before I ever met her, and one of them is I'm going to introduce now. Someone who was a friend of hers at Colorado College, Julie Price, who's come up from Philadelphia, and she's just going to say a few things about Ruth, and we're going to get through it together. And she's very emotional, so we're just going to have to do that.
Thank you. Don't go too far.
I'm there if you need a hug, don't worry.
So it takes a lot to get me in front of the microphone. But Ruth was alive. We met when we were 18 and 19 at Colorado College. sitting out in the hallway in the dorm. Her room was next to mine, and she was always playing Bob Dylan. And we would talk endless hours and go to meals, and one thing led to another, and she really became what, in today's lingo, she was my person. After her death, I was just flooded with memories, some random, some not so random. Ruth taught me to eat an avocado. She taught me to bake an acorn squash, cut it in half with butter and brown sugar. Um, she told me which sandals to buy in the summertime, which ones were the most comfortable. These are the sort of random memories. We worked on political campaigns. We knocked on doors advocating that children's pajamas be treated with a flame retardant. We cut class to watch the Watergate hearings. After the 1976 Olympics, we tried to get tickets to see Dorothy Hamill in Denver, and there were no tickets, of course, so we snuck in. And we did, I think there's a scene in a movie like this where there are no seats, but there are just a few empty seats, and we had our eyes on those seats, so we kept moving. Because as people came toward us with their tickets, looking at us, but we did get to see Dorothy Hamill and a lot of other great skating that day. These are the sort of random memories. And then on a deeper level, Ruth had a huge impact on my life overall. As you all know, anyone who knows her, Ruth was one thing, she was persistent. And at Colorado College, she had more confidence in me than I did. And she would, I was not so sure I could cut it at Colorado College. It was a hard school, but Ruth didn't see it that way. And she would do things like say, let's just stop by and see Professor Ashley. And I'd be thinking, that's that reputable professor who's really hard, and I have no interest in stopping by to see her. And Ruth would be like, oh, let's just stop by. It's right on the way. She might not even be there. So I'd be like, rather than fighting to not do it, it was easier to just stop by. So we stopped by to meet Professor Ashley. And that was the beginning of my becoming a history major. I took many, many courses from this professor. And she was truly a wonderful professor. And I might not have ever registered if it hadn't been for Ruth. There was another professor, Professor Gray. Ruth would be like, oh, so Glenn Gray's teaching Aristotle and Plato in the spring. You got to sign up for this class. And I'd be like, who's Plato? But she was persistent. And did you sign up yet? The deadline's coming. You're going to be on the waiting list. I don't know how she did that because I'm not that easy to push around. But she got me signed up for these fantastic college courses, which, of course, made a difference in my entire life. Now, not only did she get me signed up for these courses, but before papers were due, we didn't have really exams. We had lots and lots of papers to write. Like the day before a paper was due, Ruth would come up to me and say, do you want me to type your paper? I think I was her first editee, if that's the word. Do you want me to type your paper? And I'd be like, no, I got it. I so wanted to be like her and just type and whip off my papers. 11 o'clock that night, I'd be hunting for Ruth. A paper's due at 6 a.m., right? I'd be hunting down Ruth. And please, can you type my paper? I'll pay you. You can borrow my car. I offered. She never asked for anything, and she never said no. We would stock up on Diet Dr. Pepper, peanut M&Ms, and coffee, take it to an empty classroom. I would read my most recent draft, and she would type. Now, here's an editorial thing. This foreshadowed her future, I think. In my draft, I had written a lot of dumb jokes. I don't know why. I just had, but fully intending to take them out. This is a paper on elections to the German Parliament before World War I, right? Nothing funny there. But somehow I had interspersed these jokes in my paper. And Ruth's typing along, and I'm going, you can take that out. And she's like, no, it's funny. Let's leave it in. I'm like, are you kidding? Again, we're afraid of these professors here. And she's like, no, it's really funny. Let's leave it in. I'm like, I never intended to leave it in. Well, we left it in. Several, actually, more than one. And the amazing thing is she was right. When I got my papers back, I got these positive comments by the jokes that I meant to cut. So that's Ruth. So she got me signed up for classes. She typed my papers. We had some down days at Colorado College, both of us. This is another example of her persistence. That one of the memories I was just flooded with. There was a day when I had decided I wasn't coming out of my apartment. It was just a bad day. Not coming out. So I hear someone come up the stairs and knocking on the door. It's like, Julie, it's Ruth, let me in. I'm like, not saying a word. Not there. Come on, Julie, I know you're in there. Open the door. Silence. Julie, I know you're in there. Bang, 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 bang. Open the door. Let me in. I never let her in. This is the only one I want. But she did that for about an hour. I am not kidding you. I know you're in there. Open that door. And then she finally left. And we had always planned to get together again and talk. And I was going to tell her, I was there. You were right. I don't know. She probably knew I was in there. It was just one of those days. And here's, some of you may not know how competent Ruth was in ways outside of being a great editor and political activist. One day, I don't know why I did this, I couldn't get into my apartment and I broke a little window pane out to open the little lock. This is what you do when you don't have full frontal lobe growth. Because I didn't think ahead. I just had to get in, knocked it out, and then I was stunned that here I had done this. I got what I needed, but I could have been, charged with a crime or something by the landlord. What do? I call Ruth. Ruth shows up. I don't know how she learned this, with a glass pane, little putty knife, God knows what else, and replaced the window pane for me. I could have been arrested. She's the person I called when I scared myself drinking too much. I'd be like, Ruth, am I going to be okay? Yeah. Anyway, I want to leave you with one last memory, which is a wonderful memory to me. We were driving between Colorado Springs and Denver, and it was a beautiful Colorado afternoon. I hope some of you here know those afternoons. The sun is shining. John Denver wrote songs about them. We're in my brother's little Datsun convertible, little car with a roll bar. Beautiful day. We're on the road, and the next thing you know, I don't know which one of us came up with this idea, but it was like, hey, let's take our shirts off. It was that kind of day. We did it. I don't remember pulling over. It was the 70s. We were feminists, but we wore bras. They were relatively ugly, modest bras, but whatever. We felt the sunshine and that wonderful atmosphere in Colorado. We drove all the way to Denver like that. I don't know when we put them back on either. That's my memory. And so I never got to say to Ruth, to thank her for, making an immeasurable difference in my life and being a friend in the true sense of that word. So thank you, Ruth. Thank you. Thank you.
So I have one giveaway here. As I was going through a filing cabinet, I found Ruth's Colorado College directory from 71, 72. Thanks, Julie. So, someone who knew her long before I did, and she was maybe a little bit who's gay? So she moved to New York in and around 1975 to go to Columbia to get her master's degree in history. To hear her tell it again, this was 12, 14 years before I met her. She spent most of her time from then and then into the 80s at CBGB's and in the punk scene. She graduated from Columbia. She did a variety of jobs. She worked at the Strand. She took the desk over from Patti Smith when Patti Smith signed a record contract. So she was in the basement. If you were ever in the Strand in the basement in around 1976, you saw Ruth, and she was probably drinking a coffee and reading a book and saying, "Yeah, it's over there." All right. So publishing and film was kind of how she made her bread and butter. She happened upon a friend who was working on a film in the street. The way she tells the story, that was doing production, and they were in the street shooting a scene, and they said they needed help. So she became like a traffic person, traffic PA is what we call them. The film turned out to be Once Upon a Time in America, Sergio Leone's film, and she, after that, just worked on kind of an incredible array of films. She worked with Francis Coppola. She worked with Martin Scorsese on King of Comedy. She did a couple of films with Susan Seidelman, one Desperately Seeking Susan, and she tells the story. She told the story often that she knew it was going to be a hit when she was riding in the cab to the production office, and the cab driver was playing the Madonna song that was just breaking then, and he knew all the lyrics. And she's like, she went into the office, she said, "We have a hit." She also did a film called Making Mr. Right. The producer is here, Joel and Nancy. Thank you for coming. Joel, great friend and mentor, employer of Ruth over the years, producer of Making Mr. Right, and somehow, and student, yeah, well, thank you for that. And somehow, if you ever see Making Mr. Right, it's a film with John Malkovich. They somehow talked Ruth into a 3-line cameo as reporter number 3, something that is totally out of her character. So she has this back and forth with John Malkovich in that movie. Someday, maybe afterwards, you explain to me how you did that, because it's just so unlike her to say yes to something like that. And we would get residual checks from Orion for like $19 for years afterwards, and then Orion went bankrupt, so they stopped. Weirdly, out of that, she worked at Fox, and she met a writer who she really liked, and he needed an assistant, and he had a first look deal. His name was Tony Schwartz, and so she worked for Tony for a couple of years, and he was writing scripts and writing interesting articles for a variety of publications. He got the opportunity to write a book about Donald Trump, then just a blip on the horizon in New York, and he was kind of infamous, and she told him not to do it. There was a tweet somewhere that happened in 2016 that somewhere on Facebook or something, she basically said, "Okay, now I have to talk about Trump." She worked on The Art of the Deal for 2 years. She's mentioned in the credits, and she was there with Trump in that horror show of his office, and went through that whole process. And I tell that because it's just another weird synchronous thing, but also because in a weird way, that's how we ended up in Riverdale, because she at one point house sat for Tony Schwartz and fell in love with the neighborhood, and just started looking, and we moved here not that long ago. So the only good thing that came out of Donald Trump's association, from my point of view. So I met Ruth in 1989 working on a film called Coupe de Ville. I was living in Los Angeles, and it was a film that we did on location, cute little film with Danny Stern and Eric Gross, and directed by Joe Roth, who abandoned the picture because he was about to take over at Fox. So he abandoned the picture kind of in the middle, and we didn't know what was going on until later. I fell in love right away. She took longer. And I decided to think seriously about moving to New York. When the film wrapped, she said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Greece. I have a friend who has a house in Greece. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I had never been anywhere like that. I didn't even have a passport when I met Ruth, because you could go to Mexico and Canada back then and not have a passport. And that's the only places I'd ever been. I'd never been to anywhere in Europe. So I said yes. I came to New York. We went to Greece. I got my passport. I spent my 29th birthday there. I came back and they said, "Okay, I'm moving. I'm going to pack everything and move to New York." Because I thought, I mean, how does this happen? Of course I'm going to do that. So I packed all my stuff, moved to New York, and we started travels. She continued working in publishing. She produced a film, but mostly publishing was her passion. She really loved books. If you've ever been in our apartment, we have thousands of books. We have a 16-foot long bookcase that's packed too deep with books. They're almost all hers. I probably have about 10 of them. 5 of them I've read, probably. She changed my life. I think she was in disbelief when I said I was going to move to New York. And I said, well, it's obvious. I mean, she changed my life completely. That brings us kind of to 2016. We started our life. We'd adopted 2 kids, Leah and Maya, in China, and we built a house and we built a family here in Riverdale. And 2016 happened, and Trump was elected, and she cried every day for months. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. She cried every day. I know a lot of other people did, but she cried every day. And then she just got pissed off, and she said, "Okay, well, I need to up the ante." And so she started looking for like-minded people, and a group called the Huddle was formed, and many of them are here. They helped me organize this because I was a basket case. And I'd like to introduce one of the members, Elizabeth Levy, who's going to just read a little something and talk about Ruth. Thank you for coming.
I didn't want to take a lot of time, so I am really, really pleased that Jim's given you so much information about what Ruth did before I ever met her. And Julie, who was here a minute ago, where did she go? She gave you a sense of Ruth's buoyancy. When Ruth was there, it was like a helium balloon of good emotions. She just was a wonderful presence. So I think you captured a lot of that very well. Thank you. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the fellow Huddle members and to speak about how Ruth influenced me and our group's activities. We each have enormous affection for Ruth, and we really, really miss her. We loved her in part because she took a genuine interest in each of us. She was a good listener. She would remember what other people in the group had said a week ago, 2 weeks ago. She was respectful of other people's opinions, even the ones she disagreed with. How rare is that? Apparently, huddles were created around the country after the Women's March. After Trump was elected and there was a Women's March on Washington, there was a call to create women's political action groups around the country, and this one was formed here in Riverdale. And I think Ruth, I came later, but I think Ruth was one of the founding members of the Riverdale group. And it was to pay more attention to politics on a big scale and a small scale, including the details that can be boring but are necessary. She was a natural leader and she led by example. She read widely. She was always informed on any topic that she spoke about. She'd educate us. She'd provide suggested reading. I actually still have a lot of emails I saved from the Huddle, and I have a bunch from Ruth, and many of them are, please read this, please read that. She put you on to things. encouraging you, and she'd share her own personal experiences that helped shape her opinion. For all that she did, all that you've heard, she almost never spoke about her professional accomplishments. She didn't talk about herself. But she did once say that she remembered when Martin Luther King was killed, people in her hometown of Littleton cheered. And it was just, I've got goosebumps again. Many of us are New Yorkers, and Ruth would often bring that kind of practical Midwestern, this is the way it is in the rest of the country, perspective to our discussions. But her real first passion was justice, about making our government officials and our agencies deliver what they promise, and making our federal, state, and local government actions come closer to the shared ideals that we say about justice, but we all know aren't necessarily everybody's reality. She wanted everyone to be treated justly in how our laws are written and how they're enforced. And she didn't just talk about these things, she did things I'm saying that very few of us would agree to do. She became a New York City Board of Elections poll worker. She would come back and tell us ways in which the polls worked and they didn't work, the technical parts. She campaigned in this election district to be elected to the Bronx County Democratic Committee. She didn't win, but she put up a good effort, and she did it against the people who thought they would control everything about what happens in politics here locally. She got us to pay attention to two national forums. I never would have paid attention to these but for Ruth. One was Eric Holder started a national effort about gerrymandering called All on the Line. And then there was another one called Smart Elections that focused on election security and voting rights. And in March 2021, I got an email from her urging me and all of the rest of us to support a bill in the New York State Senate that would help prevent us from adopting, now these are Ruth's words in her email, really crap ballot scanning machines. We don't want New York to buy really crap ballot machines. And that, was her directness. She often moved us from discussing an issue to engaging in real political action. She and Jim, as he mentioned, would host postcard writing sessions in their apartment. We do handwritten messages. Who really wants to sit and sign 20, 30 postcards? She'd get us to come. She'd make it pleasant. She'd be welcoming. It was cheerful. She made the whole thing seem like, something you'd want to come back and do again. She would move me personally from having a sort of a vague interest in something like, oh yeah, that thing that happened is unfair, to actually setting aside some of my own personal time, being inconvenienced, and get out there and do something about it. After we lost Ruth last year, we renamed our group in her honor. So now we call ourselves the Ruth Mullen Riverdale Huddle. I know that all the Huddle members join me in thanking her for her contributions to our efforts and being such a good role model for all of us. And in her name, I want to encourage everyone here, please be good active citizens. Please vote. Speak to everyone you know and you're related to. Get them to vote. Help monitor and participate in our governance and our political action and our government policy issues. Thank you.
Thank you. This is called a rally because it's a little bit of a memorial, but it's really a rally because she would be pissed off if it were just about her. She would want there to be some reason why we've gathered. I think if you look up in Webster's the word progressive, there's a picture of Gustavo Rivera right beside it. State Senator Gustavo Rivera has represented the 33rd Senate District in the Bronx since November of 2010 and most recently ran successfully for re-election in the August 2022 primary against a formidable machine and a great win for all of us. It gives me great honor to welcome the Honorable Gustavo Rivera. Give him hell.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I want to thank you, Jim. It's a great honor to speak anytime that someone is being honored. And considering that I did not have the pleasure to meet her, it is even more. I sincerely appreciate it, sir. On a whim, I went and I looked at the intertubes is a thing. Look at the Googles, and the Google says that the name Ruth comes from an ancient Hebrew word, and it can mean friend, friendship, or compassionate friend. And so, as I'm learning about her, not only reading some of the stories that I've read in the last couple of days, but certainly listening to some of what I've heard today, that is certainly appropriate, but even more so. It seems that even before there was the word organizer or activist, that is precisely what she was doing, because as she was knocking on that door, I know you're in there, I know you're in there, come on out, I know you're in there, or as she was telling you, you need to go talk to that professor, she was organizing you. She was an activist even back then. She might not have known exactly how to name it, but she was always doing that. When, in the stories that were told about what happened in 2016 as a turning point in her life, it gave her a certain level of purpose that she obviously had all the way back then. But it made her focus it on the day-to-day that is happening right in her neighborhood, in our state, in our country. And it gave her, I think it gives us a sense of who we have to be if we are to honor her. You have someone who certainly could have chosen to not do any of those things, and probably as the terrible stories that she could have told about hanging out with Donald Trump for those months, it is the type of thing where you can say, like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. She knew better than most of us how terrible this person was. But yet she knew that it was a necessity, that there was an obligation that she had as someone who knew exactly who she was, who that guy was, to actually turn that anger and that frustration into action. So I would say that and I'm incredibly proud to speak today, but I am incredibly proud to know some of you who have known her. And in the weeks and months to come, as we get to know each other, because I will start representing all of you who live in this neighborhood, I will start representing you kind of now, but officially in January. But please tell me some of those stories as a way for you not only to remember your friend, but also to remind me, as a representative of yours, that there is a level of responsibility that we all have to be activists and to mobilize and to try to change our community for the better. That is what Ruth did. I'm hoping that's what we all continue to do in our own. Thank you.
Alessandra Biaggi was someone who was very important to the huddle. They met with her early on when she was trying to decide whether or not she was going to run against Jeff Klein. She ultimately decided that she was going to do it. She really wanted to be here today, but she's a bridesmaid in a wedding, so she could not attend, but she wanted me to read this. I'm so sorry I'm not able to join you in person today as we remember our friend Ruth Mullen. I had the joy and privilege of getting to know Ruth in 2018 when I first ran for the state Senate. Ruth played a critical role in ensuring that the New York State Senate was able to gain a true Democratic majority that year. But beyond her electoral contributions, I felt so lucky to get to know Ruth as a passionate, intelligent, and most of all, kind human being. Ruth was a dedicated activist in Riverdale seeking to create change in our community. But she did not limit her work to this borough. She was steadfast in her commitment to advocating for progressive growth across New York State and the country. Her life and work are an example to all of us of the power we each have to make both our communities and our world a better place. It is tragic that Ruth's safety was not assured and her death was not prevented. I'm relieved to know that a stoplight installed at this corner, I'm relieved to see the stoplight installed at this corner and hope that it will prevent future tragedies. But we must demand continued action from those who have power to make our streets safe. Let us continue Ruth's work and honor her memory by fighting for progressive change and speaking up in the face of injustice. Jamal Bowman also, I had a back and forth with, and he just had oral surgery, so he begged off. He sent some words. In fairness of time, I'm just going to say that he was honored to be thought of, and he would have liked to have been here with all of you. But he said next time. Hopefully, there won't be a next time for something like this. Um, uh, the EFA is the Editorial Freelancers Association. It was an organization that was really important to Ruth. And I'm honored to have Christina Fry. There she is. Hi. Who's going to talk about the EFA briefly, about Ruth, and about a scholarship that they have created in her honor. Do you want to?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, you can skip through part of it. I just took the whole thing. But, I think the important part is
So the Editorial Freelancers Association is an association that brings together this huge and disparate community of freelancers in the editorial world. And obviously there's tons of different people, very different needs, very different concerns. Ruth was a volunteer for years with them, and I actually met her when I started volunteering for the organization. And she was, the New York chapter chair. We served as co-executives. She was on the social media committee. But besides all those external facing things, she was always the one who would do the hard and difficult but really important job. So for example, we wanted to create an anti-harassment policy. It's an extremely important thing. It's not an easy thing to create. And it was difficult to form a committee, but Ruth was there. She was willing to do the work. She was willing to do the behind the scenes work for the important stuff. And there were press releases and difficult letters and statements and anything that was important, anything that was important beyond just beyond the externals, anything that really, really mattered. She was always there to work in the background. So last summer, one of the things we had been talking about is creating a scholarship for on behalf of the Editorial Freelancers Association, and something that was in pursuit of justice and maybe to help, start to address some of the inequality in the publishing industry. And that was actually a project that was actively being worked on last August. So of course, when that project came to fruition, there was absolutely no question that we were going to name it the Ruth Mullen Memorial Scholarship Program. It is in partnership with the United Negro College Fund, and under the program, in Ruth's name, we're sponsoring two $5,000 scholarships. One scholarship is for an undergraduate attending a historically Black college or university, and one is for an HBCU alum attending graduate school. As far as I know, the applications are in, and we're going to be announcing the scholarship recipients in a few weeks. Yes, in a few weeks. And this is Ruth was like, actually, I'm reading Jim's words here. Ruth was always very supportive of the project. And while she would have been mortified at the thought of having something named after her, like I said, she always preferred to work in the background. It would be an honor she would have secretly cherished, because advancing the cause of equal opportunity was very near to her heart.
So, where do we go from here? Get involved. That's what Ruth would say. It's great to vote, and it's important to get out the vote, but it's important to support causes that will make a change. The last few months have been a horror show of decisions coming down from the Supreme Court in all manner and variety, and probably just a hint of what's to come. There's a lot of forces that are marshaled against us, so it's important for us as New Yorkers to get out there. So you honor Ruth most if you get involved. Find postcards, send them out. There are plenty of ways to get involved. She worked at the polls. You could work at the polls. Get involved in organizations. Engage with people. Change happens one person at a time. So that would be kind of the last thing that I'd like you all to think about is it would be the best way to honor her and remember her name to do that. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. She was my best friend. I don't know how to process this. This is something that was a long time in coming. I'm glad that we did it. I have one last thing that I'd like to do. I have a bouquet of roses, and I'd like to, Bill has them, our good friend Bill Strumpek from Ohio State, go Bucks. Um, I'm going to ask you to just take one. You can take it home. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm going to go over to the street sign that's over there, and I'm going to find a place to stick mine in. That would be a great thing, but just take one and do what you feel. Again, thanks to everyone. Be safe. Oh, and one last person. Yes, no, we have one last person. Chelsea, yes. Sorry, one last person. So Chelsea and her wife Sol are here with Luciana, and I wanted Chelsea because she's the only Mullen here to represent the family. So Chelsea, please come up. She was kind of hesitant to do it. I was blocking it out, but I'm glad that she's
Public speaking isn't really my jam. Bit like Ruth in that way. So, hi everybody. I'm really heartened to see so much of Ruth's community here, though I'm still really furious that it is under these circumstances. For those of you who don't know, I'm Chelsea Mullen. I'm Ruth's niece. I grew up in Colorado, and due to the distance, I didn't really have the luck to know her well during my childhood. But when I moved to New York 10 years ago, she welcomed me with open arms and taught me more about life, hope, and forgiveness than I ever could have believed. She showed me a life lived with vigor and determination. She helped me to see that all risks are worth taking as long as you are aligned with your values and can face yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. I am deeply grateful for her generosity and heartbroken that my daughter won't grow up with her wit, humor, and passion. For those of you who came to know Ruth through her activism and political work, I hope that her memory is as urgent as a knife. There is no time for complacency, and if you cannot do the urgent work that needs to be done, then move over and support those who are ready to do it. What is at stake is nothing more and nothing less than human lives. Thank you all for your time and presence here today, and fuck the patriarchy.
Exactly. Thanks again to everyone. Get involved, please. Honor her best by doing that, and feel free to come and grab a rose and do with it what you will. Have a great day. Be safe and be well, and let's win what we can in November.